The next area is very critical, having to do with the Colorado River drought and shortage update. So our presenter is Brian Basemeyer with the Water Resources and Scottsdale Water, and he, of course, is our executive director. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to be here tonight, and we have a little update for you on the current Colorado River drought and Tier 1 shortage. And I'll be presenting with Gretchen Baumgartner, our Water Policy Manager. So on this slide, just a little reminder of the number of accounts. We have 93,000 active water accounts. The majority of those are residential accounts of 82,000. And then at the bottom of the slide, I put a little thing about an acre foot. An acre foot is a measurement we use quite often in the water arena. It is literally that, 1 acre, 1 foot deep in water. It's an odd measurement, I agree, but it's one you'll see a lot of, and that's 325,851 gallons. Let me see if I get this. Oops, let me go back. Sorry about that. There we go. You got it? Okay. So in 2020, just a little diagram to show our water deliveries. In 2020, which was a very hot and dry year, you can see that 3/4 of our water deliveries came from the Central Arizona Project, the Salt River Project, reclaimed water, and groundwater being the other components. I do have to always state here with groundwater, when we use groundwater, that's water that we've actually already put in the ground. Since 2006, we've been in a condition called safe yield, meaning we put more water in the ground every year than we use. So when we say we use 3,500 acre-feet of groundwater, that's water we have put in the ground. It just literally defines where we got it. We got it from a well that we had previously put water in. So with that, then I'll have Gretchen come and talk to you about the Tier 1 situation, and I'll be back to talk about some of our actions after that.
I'm a little shorter than Brian. Thank you. I want to thank Mayor and Council for having me here tonight. My name is Gretchen Baumgartner. Before I move on to the next slide, 75% approximate of our supply is, as you can see from the chart, Colorado River, which is why we're here tonight. So in August of this year, the Bureau of Reclamation declared the first ever Tier 1 shortage. And this declaration was made in August, but is for January 1, 2022. The projections for Lake Mead will be below the 1075 trigger, and the projections will be at 1065, and is made by the United States Secretary of the Interior. I like to quote the Department of Water Resources Director Tom Bushatsky in his joint statement with the CAP when this happened. We work collaboratively with Arizona stakeholders and basin states to deploy more adaptive measures consistent with the drought contingency plan and associated agreements. And at the same time, the Arizona Department of Water Resources and Central Arizona Project will continue to work with partners within Arizona and across the basin to develop and implement longer-term solutions and shared risk we all face in the Colorado River now and into the future. I like quoting this because this is not a Scottsdale problem, this is not a Valley problem, this is not an Arizona problem, this is a regional basin state problem. And to find solutions and implement plans is going to take a lot of hard conversations and a lot of innovative tools to do so. So let's talk about how this affects the basin states. I'm going to talk about the lower basin states because they're governed a little differently than the upper basin. So the lower basin is Nevada, California, and Arizona. What triggers the shortage on the Colorado River is the level of Lake Mead, and Lake Mead is the lowest and largest reservoir on the system up there near Vegas. And so when the lake levels get to 1075, we trigger Tier 1, and it get progressively lower, it triggers a higher level of shortage, as you can see with the big circles on the figure on the right. So come January 1, we're going to be in the blue circle, where it triggers a 512,000 acre-foot reduction to the state of Arizona, and that will be largely comprised of Central Arizona Project water, and that is about 1/3 of the Central Arizona Project water that is allocated for the system. So what does Lake Mead look like in the last 20+ years? This graph is the levels of Lake Mead over the last 22 or so years, and you can see how it progressively decreased. Now there's several reasons for this. One, we're in a drought. We've been in a drought for about 22 years. It's the driest 22 years on recorded history. The other thing is there's increasingly evidence that we're seeing aridification in the desert Southwest. The conditions that we're seeing in lower hydrology might not be just a drought condition. There might be a new normal, and we're not sure exactly what that looks like, so there's uncertainty built into the system. And the third component is the structural deficit. When the states got together and made the Colorado River Compact in 1922, and they used the period on record at that time, it was the wettest period of record. So they took a bunch of water and said, we'll divvy this up amongst basin states. We haven't seen that kind of water since then. So it is over-allocated, and all of these components bring us to where we are today. Ooh, that was interesting. So this is the 24-month study by the Bureau of Reclamation. These are the projections for the next 2 years, and this is what actually triggers the official shortage. They look at the hydrology in the 90th percentile, so this is a wet year. That's that blue dotted line. The 50th percentile, which is the most probable, and the 10th percentile, which is a really dry year. You can see each one of those probabilities is below the 1075 mark, which means the next several years we're projected to be in a tier 1. You can also see from this graph out into 2023, there's a potential projection for it to be a 1050, which is a tier 2A. So this is really concerning that the projections are going lower and lower. So what does this mean for the city of Scottsdale and its allocation? I know this is a little bit confusing, but I'll go through it. So the figure on the right is what's referred to as the Central Arizona Project priority stack. Western Water is based on a priority system, senior rights and junior rights. Those on junior are on the top of the priority stack and get cut first. Those senior rights are in the bottom of the priority stack and get cut last. You can see from the gray scaled out of the 512,000 acre feet of a tier 1 reduction, the priority stack is cut into thirds. So those in the priority of agricultural pool or other excess are completely cut in a tier 1. Those in what's called the NIA priority pool are cut approximately about 65%. On the table on the left, which is color-coded to those priority rights, is Scottsdale's allocation of Central Arizona Project. We have a very small sliver of water in NIA priority. About 4% of our CEP supply is NIA priority. So that's the amount of allocation that is at risk in a tier 1. The overwhelming majority is what's called M&I subcontract, or some of our Indian leases are in that higher priority water. So what does it look like in some of the other stages of the drought? This table came directly out of the drought management plan, which you all approved back in November, and this is an approximation of cuts we are assuming that we'll see in each one of those tiers. Now, I want to note that this was put in there for planning purposes and long range, and there are some mitigation strategies that the state has in place and is also talking about. But those are short-ranged and uncertain. So this is outside of any mitigation strategies. You can see in a tier 1 and a tier 2A and B, it's not large amounts of water. It's really that tier 3 cut that we would start to get concerned. So you can see in a tier 3, we're cut approximately around 15,000 acre feet of water, or 13.5 MGD. And again, those are approximates. And we've all known this for decades. Water planners know that this is something that was potentially coming down to us. And we've been planning for this. Arizona has a rich history of water resource planning, and all the municipalities and providers also have a rich history of planning. So what has Scottsdale been doing to plan for this? This table here is a breakdown of what we've been doing for recharge of our extra Central Arizona Project supply that we have that we don't necessarily need to satisfy today's demands, as well as recharge water for our reclaimed water up at the water campus. Now, when you talk about water resources, our personal finances is a really great analogy. So we all have a savings account, right? And we put it away for things like our air conditioning breaking, or our kids going to college, or retirement. This is no different than that. This is our savings account. So this is going to be a really great tool to weather those rainy or unrainy days. What's interesting here is going back to this table, you can see the tier 3 was 15,000 acre feet approximately we cut. On average, over the last 5 years, and this is just a snapshot because we've been recharging for decades, over the last 5 years, we've recharged about 15,000 acre-feet in our savings account, which is a really great place to be, and it makes us feel safe. It's wonderful, and we've done our planning, but you wouldn't want to rely on your savings account for the long term. So those are the kind of questions that we all stars need to ask, and we need to implement programs to make sure that every single one of our residents and commercial entities and ourselves conserve to make sure that we manage this in the best way we can. And I'm going to turn this back to Brian so he can talk about some of the things we've been working on.
Thank you, Gretchen. So we'll move forward. So what have we done, and what did we intend to do? Well, as Gretchen mentioned, on August 16th, the Bureau of Reclamation declared a Tier 1 shortage on the Colorado River. On August 17th, the city manager activated our drought management plan at a Stage 1 level. And we were the first city to activate our drought management plan, and to this date, the only city in the state that I know of that has activated its drought management plan. We suspect several cities will activate their drought management plan in January when the actual cuts come. It was our evaluation that it's coming. We know it's coming. We might as well declare this. We don't need to wait until the actual cuts come. So the city manager made this declaration. At a Stage 1, it invokes no cuts to our customers or no restrictions to our customers, but it does require us to up our game as far as conservation messaging, as well as activate our drought management team. And our response, the first line is all that we currently do. So we do a lot, and I'll take a little minute to talk about that. We have a very robust conservation effort that Gretchen's team heads up. We are a nationwide leader in recycled water, and we'll continue to recycle water as we've done for decades. So we take water, we treat it through our reclamation plant, we treat it again through our advanced water treatment facility with ozone, ultrafiltration, RO, and ultraviolet filtration, ultraviolet photolysis. So we'll use all that, treat it to better than drinking water standards, and put that water back in our aquifer, and Gretchen showed some of the volumes that we do. So we'll continue to do that. In addition, as I mentioned, we've activated a drought management team and expand our conservation messaging. I'll get to that more in detail. We'll continue with our ASR well programs. So Council authorized and Scottsdale Water put on its strategic plan back in 2019 a plan to do 4 aquifer storage and recovery wells. Those wells do really 3 things for us. First of all, they allow us to put our unused portion of our CAP water in the ground in Scottsdale where we can use it. The other thing is that we can recover that water either that same year or in later years. Additionally, those wells are all within several miles of our water campus, so they can enable us to further recover our effluent, that with treated water that we put into the ground, our recycled water, and allow us to recover that as well. We're going to expand our recycled water recharge and irrigation systems where we can, and I'm going to talk about the AMI portal and the web portal in the next slide. So one of the big things we've done is this year has activated our WaterSmart web portal. So customers can go online in their web portal and see their water consumption online either through their phone or via computer. It allows them to look at usage, and that gives them some interactive tools. And it's really useful when combined with our automated meter infrastructure, so what we call AMI. And that's where we can read meters via fixed radio network, and we can get that information on a near real-time basis. So customers can actually see on an hourly basis what they've been using. We plan to initiate leak alerts early next year so that customers can actually interactively get leak alert notices that will allow them to actually act on a water leak in their backyard that they may not recognize they have. We currently have 40,000 of our 90,000 plus 93,000 customers on AMI, and we'll continue to expand that by another 10,000 every 10 to 15,000 every year until we have all of our customers on the AMI system. Our drought management team, and these are the folks that are on our drought management team by their position. Additionally, Assistant City Manager Bill Murphy has been joining us as well. The team's responsibility to coordinate and communicate both internally and externally. And every one of our meetings, which you have monthly, Gretchen also gives an update of where we are with the Tier 1 shortage and the shortage on the Colorado River. And we've set internally a goal of 5% reduction in our water use as the city for the next year. So our goal internally is to use 5% less water than we used the prior year. And we also want to communicate the great job that a number of our departments and divisions have done. One of those I want to tout is Parks, which is traditionally provided water or watered the parks with 15% less than the Arizona Department of Water Resources conservation allocation for turf irrigation. So they've been performing at 15% less than the state expects folks to be able to water that turf with. As a result, over the last 20 years, we've saved 3 billion gallons of water. That's substantial. Is that enough? No, we don't think that's enough. We want to step up our game. So we're going to try to save another 5%. Additionally, our facilities, we've been going through facility audits, both with commercial entities in the community, and we started this year with our facilities group. And we've done a number of those audits that have resulted in a potential savings of 8 million gallons a year within our own facilities. And we have a number of these to continue working on. One of the neat savings I'll go through here on our facilities audits is we obviously meet with our facilities folks. Water Resources works hand in hand with our facilities, and we identify leaks, potential rebates, submetering, and our cooling towers are one of the areas where a lot of water is used in cooling towers. And we have a pilot program going this year where we will put new controllers on 3 different cooling towers with the idea of saving additional water, and we're going to monitor that and pilot that. So we'll have internal information not only to use with our other facilities, but also with external facilities as well. So we're excited about our teamwork with our facilities groups. Another area that we're pursuing is with HOAs and multifamily resources. Now this says new. I have to say that we have been actively engaged with our HOAs and multifamilies facilities for a number of years. But that typical engagement goes in putting out the information about rebates and letting the HOAs decide what they want to do. This year we're going to actively pursue them so that we are going to message them and actively contact them, trying to have meetings with HOA boards, landscapers, and the management companies so we can proactively work with our HOAs and the multifamilies facilities. We want to understand their water needs, and we want to suggest water savings that they can do, such as foregoing a winter lawn, removing turf. And it talks about preserving asphalt. So one of the side benefits, so if you look at the picture, I apologize, it's rather small, right below the graph, on the left with the green grass, that's a little strip of green grass. And personally, I find those rather irritating, mostly because those are always the ones we get a call about, that we're overwatering, and it's not the city. It ends up being generally an HOA that's overwatering on an area. But that overwatering causes accelerated wear of asphalt and concrete. It actually degrades the infrastructure. So the HOA can save themselves money with their own infrastructure as well as the city's infrastructure when they don't overwater, and they take out those strips, and they can put xeriscape, they can put low water use landscaping in there, save themselves water, save themselves a bill, save themselves premature wear on infrastructure. And the ultimate we end up with a water budget for the HOA that helps them understand their water needs and gives them a target for their water consumption use. One of the big questions is economic development and how can we grow in a constrained environment. The staff would like to propose some tools that council can use to make some evaluation on what are the good decisions to make with water and economic development. These tools we put under the umbrella of sustainable water management principles. And the land use tools that we are proposing, the first one was net water use. So we're at one water use. We, as a city, evaluate water as one water. So that includes drinking water, wastewater. All water has value. All water has a purpose for us. And we recycle all the water that's returned to us. So really, when you look at a development or economic activity and they use water, you need to understand the net water consumptions. A little example. If you have two different entities, both use 10,000 gallons a day of water. One entity returns 2,000 gallons to the sewer. The other entity returns 8,000 gallons to the sewer. The net water for the one that returns 2,000, you take the 10,000, subtract the 2, you have an 8,000 gallons of water that are out there that is gone. After that 8,000 gallons is gone. Compare that to the other that returns 8,000 gallons to the sewer, the net water is 2,000. Very dramatic differences that if you don't look at net water and you only looked at the potable water, the drinking water going into that facility, would cause you to think they're both the same. In fact, they aren't the same as far as the net water use. Also, commitment of water over time. A lot of different industries have different water consumptions over time, and it's important to understand what that is. Location of growth. I alluded this earlier when the discussions in the Old Town. We have two surface water suppliers, the CAP and the SRP. CAP water we can use throughout the city. It has no restrictions on where we can use it and how we can use it. Salt River Project water is restricted to Salt River Project lands. And so it's basically any place south of the Arizona Canal. And of those two systems, as we talk, the shortage right now is on the CAP system in its shortage, is not on the SRP system. The SRP system has been able to weather the drought conditions better currently than the CAP systems. I can't make forecasts for what's going to happen in the future, but I can tell you right now the SRP system is not incurring a shortage. And so when you look at that, we can't take SRP water and pump that off of SRP lands. If we do, in the end, we pay them back with our other water resources, be that groundwater or CAP water. So we're rather restricted to that water supply to that particular area, and it's important to note. And then the last one is economic value of water. So when two entities approach the city with an economic opportunity, we'd like to consider what the economic impacts are per gallon of water. So it would look at what are they providing on a direct and indirect economic value to the city divided by their water use, and that would give you an economic value of water. And we'd like to propose those and back to council in the spring with the full spread of these tools for council to consider and hopefully approve. Additionally, we'd like to put in other things that we do on the water side. So we have a transparent document that talks about our water quality, our infrastructure planning, our water resource acquisition, water recharge and recycling. Put those in a singular document that talks about how we have a sustainable water system and how we manage water in Scottsdale. So we plan to be back to you in the spring with these developed and have a further discussion with council in the spring. My last slide, but not my last point, is Scottsdale water trends. So in this slide, you can see our drinking water, our potable water consumption by year from 2006 on. Again, we like 2006 because that's when we started with our safe yield. And you can see, so the blue bars are by year the amount of drinking water that we delivered. The orange line is the service connections, and you can see the growth in the service connections through that time. And the black line is a trend line. It's just a statistical trend line. And you can see that it's going down while we are growing. So that's, to me, that says conservation works. We've been pushing conservation. It works. Will that line continue to go down as we grow? No, I don't suspect it will. Or will it flatten out? Will it eventually go up? I suspect it will. But it's evidence that conservation works. And going back to the slide, my first slide, when I talked about our customer counts, 82,000, the vast majority are single-family homes. In single-family homes, on average, 70% of the use is outdoors. That gives us a tremendous potential for water conservation and water conservation to work in our community. Thus our messaging for that. And again, I'm going to go, can you put the Elmo on? Kelly, thank you. Let's see if this comes up. There we go. So just more evidence of things that we want to pursue this year. These little strips of turf, you can never water them correctly. If they're less than 4 feet, the watering systems just don't work. They're always overwater. They end up prematurely wearing the asphalt, the concrete, everything. You can see dampness on both sides of this. These are just a waste of water. Kids aren't playing on it, so it's not even useful for kids to walk on and have something. It's right next to the road. Nobody wants their kid right next to the road. So it's really serving very little purpose, and we want to go after these. And my last point, last week, I know ASU was here, and they were talking about the heat island effect and mitigation strategies. And several council members pointed out that, that seems in contradiction to water conservation, because we want vegetation, and yet we don't have the water necessarily to provide for that vegetation. I don't think it's quite as stark as that, because what we in the water side want to attack is this turf, and particularly turf like this that provides no function. And while you could argue that that has some heat effect, if you go across the street, I know it's a little hard to see, there's a xeriscape across the street that has a shade canopy that doesn't have the overwatering effect here, that provides a heat effect and doesn't result in what this strip does. And additionally, when we talk about removing turf and our turf rebate program, we propose putting xeriscape irrigation in. And to the point, xeriscape, the first one here, is not xeriscape. So we don't propose you just put rock everywhere. That's ugly. It has a terrible heat effect. That's not what's being proposed. And I know I'm saying this mostly for people watching online and such, but these are a few pictures of what xeriscape is. So you can see the multi-layers, you can see the trees providing shade, the vegetation on the ground providing heat mitigation. This is what we propose when we remove turf, is to put in vegetation like this, where we do have a heat mitigation effect and we also reduce water usage. So I think we can work combining to reduce heat mitigation and reduce water use altogether. Takes a little planning, takes a little thought, but we can do that. And that concludes my presentation, pending your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Biesmeyer. I see Councilwoman Whitehead and then me. Go ahead.
I just want to thank you. That was a great presentation. I keep trying to be an expert on this topic, and every time you speak, I learn more. I know I'm not the expert yet, but thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Well, let me start with the big picture. And as you mentioned, the resources of Salt River Project and their raising the dam, Roosevelt Dam, back in '91 really helped to get more water storage. However, the CAP problem is tremendous for our neighbors that have more reliance on CAP water than we do. I've seen the charts about drought and the reduction. It's not much of a roller coaster. It's pretty much downstepping all the time. Have we had a chart of a graph showing development? What I'm talking about is new units coming online, whether they're multifamily, single family. I've never seen a graph showing, because in my opinion, we've had quite a takeoff and an acceleration of development in really raw numbers. So who would track that or show us a graph of our incline in development?
We can show you our service connections that have been made per year, and we can show you where they have occurred. I don't have those now, but I can certainly get to you those.
Well, and the other point would be, you say we have 91,000 connections. However, there may be a 200-unit complex, right, apartment or condo coming online. Does that count as one service connection, generally speaking?
It's going to have several, but it's not going to be 5,000. That's true.
Sure.
It'll be multiples, 5, 6, depends on the unit, but there'll be multiples, but it won't be 5,000.
I see. So just to maintain water pressure and make sure it doesn't blow out the faucets and toilets, there's maybe several connections.
We spend a lot of time when development comes in looking at their basis of design to ensure we understand all those flow mechanisms and how much water is going to be used.
Sure. And as I look at this chart with the water trends, you see from 2019 till 2021, there's an acceleration of, there was, the current 2021 is higher than 2012, and I realize that there was more development going on, but we are on a trend, probably an upward trend, in terms of new units coming online, and I thought we should notice that. That graph indicates that we are, on one hand, asking the people who are here to save more, spend less, to make room for new development, I guess, and then saying that it's benefiting both the existing consumer and the new consumer. I just think that we need to look at the overall impact. Eventually, our growth will semi-plateau, but I also want to point out, you mentioned the Salt River Project, again, feeding new water or water that's filtered and then goes to households in SRP area, right? South of the canal.
To clarify, Mayor, if I may,
Yeah.
Well, we use that from their canal and we treat it. I just want to make the clarification.
Sure.
We treat that water and then we provide it to them through our system.
Sure. Yeah, I live south of the Arizona Canal, so we get that water. But at the same time, you also discuss the cost of water, in that the CAP water, or whether it's CAP water or SRP water, whether it goes back into the system, that is, the wastewater gets cleansed and inserted. It's my understanding that most of our sewer water south of the canal, or the say McCormick Ranch, exits the city. So on one hand, we have a provider, SRP, that's able to provide actual water, wet water, not paper water, right? They actually have water. But generally, that would go to the Shrog, which was exported or goes downstream, and we lose that water. Is that correct?
Mayor, you're correct. Generally, that we send that water down to our Shrog partnership, which is treated and then at the 91st Avenue Treatment Facility and then used for the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station. So it is recycled. But our plan as we grow in the south is to reach down, as that growth occurs, to reach down and build additional infrastructure to pump that north so that we stay at that. Our commitment is around 8 to 8.5 million gallons a day. It varies through the year. It's just definitely given to us on a graph, but roughly on an annual basis, about 8 to 8.5 million gallons a day. And our plan over the long run as growth occurs is to reach further south to ensure that we meet our commitment of 8 to 8.5 million gallons a day, but no more than our commitment, so we can pump and recycle that water for ourselves. I have to also say that that water is, we get a return from that water for the used at the Palo Verde. It's sold to Palo Verde, and that price goes up over time. I didn't bring that graph, but that price goes up tremendously over time. And after 2025, it becomes tiered, so it provides APS an even better incentive to use less water. I believe with that tier and the cost factor, APS will continue to improve their water usage. They currently recycle their water over 20 times at the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station. So when they get our water, they recycle it 20 more times to ensure that, 20 plus times to ensure that, they get the most out of that water. But to answer your question in full, we do have that 8 and 8.5 that goes down to our Schwab partners. As over time that develops, we'll reach down and grab more and send it north.
And over time, I mean, 10 to 20 years from now, that will actually be, I want to say, building infrastructure, raising taxes to build something so that it can be pumped up north where we can recycle it and control it ourselves and still meet the 8 million minimum. With the Schwab commitment, I think that's through 2050. So we still, we're exporting water from the growth areas south of Arizona Canal, just generally speaking, but with the long-term goal of somehow building more infrastructure to control more of our wastewater treatment and then recharge. But we don't have that capability right now, correct?
No, but you will see that in the next CIP 5-year plan. We'll start the process for planning that out.
Sure. So we'll have some expenses coming for discussion, right, and water rate increases and so forth to make that happen. I see there's 3 other council people, so let's go to Councilwoman Janik and then Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you. That was a very nice presentation. I'd like a little more information on the AMI program. You said about 40,000 of our homes or customers of the 90,000 that we have are on that program.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you decide who gets it, who pays for it? Have you seen any progress with it yet, that when people get feedback, they tend to use less water?
We haven't yet seen that. I mean, that's a gross measure, so it will take us several years to sort through that. On average, when you look at other cities that have put this technology in, it's a 3 to 5% savings in water consumption. When you get folks used to that water portal and on that portal and monitoring their consumption, it's generally about 3 to 5% of savings.
Then how do you decide who gets?
Well, we have a fixed radio network with poles and antennas that we're going and expanding and setting up. So we basically have to grow it outwards because there's relays. They have to take the message and send it to one spot and relay that to another spot. So it takes a lot of planning and infrastructure work to grow that out. I'd love to next year just go and boom, we've got 90,000 people on that, but it's just not practical. We have to expand those towers, do the radiometric studies to make sure we get the reception correctly, then put the infrastructure in and slowly go about that. Additionally, as we get further in some of our northern areas where the terrain is up and down, it gets much more difficult. So it's a slow, methodical process we get. No one pays any extra for it. We absorb it all in our current rates.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that information.
Councilwoman Littlefield and then Vice Mayor Caputi.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Brian, for an excellent presentation. It's really been a pleasure working over the last few years with you because you are so dedicated to this, and it shows the work, the thought, and the effort that you've put into this. I just want to make one comment, and that is I really like the idea of people being able to monitor their water usage and find, what am I using, and then try to figure out how can I cut back and in the ways that will be least impactful for my quality of life, but good for the city to save the water. So I think that is an excellent, excellent way to go for a lot of individuals. And I think you'll probably have, from my emails and people who are concerned with water usage at this point in time, I think you'll have a lot of interest in that from our citizens. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Caputi?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Brian. That was a great presentation. I think it's really important that we're having this conversation today because, of course, all of our residents are very concerned about water. We all get emails all day long about this. So it's great that we're having this conversation. That last graph was reassuring, I think, showing that conservation efforts do work. I thought that was pretty powerful. The fact that service connections have increased and water usage has gone down. The other fact that you brought up about that we don't have an SRP shortage, which is everything south of our canal. Again, that should make people feel a little bit, sleep a little bit easier at night. We don't actually have an emergent situation south of our canal yet, which is great. One question, you made a point about the vast majority of water users being single-family homes. Probably a stupid question, but is that because we have so many more single-family homes in apartment buildings, or is it that single-family homes use more water, or what?
No, it's really the connections. So and the mayor had it correctly. There's not as many connections with a multifamily facility, so we measure those in connections. And so while I say 5,000 connections, it's a much larger population than 5,000. So I don't mean to imply that. They do generally use less, and they don't use as much outdoors through these multifamily units. But they also have, as we showed, large turf areas that we want to encourage them to take care of and, if they can, remove.
But there must be some efficiencies too, right, with having a multifamily hookup? I mean, you've got, as you just pointed out, one hookup and multiple users. That's going to be a more efficient model in some sense, right? You've got all those toilet flushes coming from one location and all the water going in and out from one spot.
When you look at yes, ma'am. When you look at a net water usage, you get more return for the water actually provided. Okay,
I know, and because you pointed out back to the things we were going to be able to use to make good decisions, I think one of those was the location of where the development goes, and so I think that ties in with that. You know, it's more efficient use, so just something to think about as we make decisions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Millhaven?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Biesmeyer, for a great presentation. I'm glad we were able to do this in this forum because we've all been getting lots and lots of questions from citizens about where we are with the water shortage. So doing this in a public meeting, I think, is really, really helpful. Thank you also for your help. We know we've got, after we declared the Tier 1, we got lots and lots of questions from constituents, and your emails to them were enlightening to them, but to us as well. And couple of things that I found really compelling that I'd like to underscore was the fact that you shared that we recharge more water back into the ground than the entire city of Scottsdale uses in a year. Did I get that right? That's okay. You can correct me.
Okay. Mayor, Councilmember Millhaven, no, we recharge more water than any of the tier shortages, and over time we have several years, upwards of 3 years of water that we've recharged at credit. So theoretically, you know, we have this big bank account that Gretchen talked about that's multiple years of our total water consumption that's been stored in our aquifers for groundwater recharge, through groundwater recharge, that we could recover.
And that despite the cutbacks, we continue to recharge water. I think that was said earlier in the presentation. So even with the cutbacks, we've got water we can recharge.
Could you, Kelly, go back to that slide?
That should give some folks some feel better about how you were able to manage through the shortage or the cutback. Yep. So
this shows our recharge efforts in effluent and CAP water. And I think Gretchen's analysis as a bank account is very valid. You know, it's a fixed value. You don't want to, we use that in emergency situations and if we need it, but obviously it is like a bank account, and we want to be very conservative at using that if we have to.
Okay, and then I also understand, right, you do forecast future demands for water, and those forecasts look at sort of what's been approved, what's going to be planned, and what future development might, so you're planning for future development already.
When we brought our impact fee analysis, which is the IIP, and the land use assumptions report, yes, those had all plans for development, and we based those on our work with long-range planning within the city and the Maricopa Association of Government Growth Patterns, and we planned for those growth patterns.
That's good to know you're staying ahead of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just finally, a couple quick thoughts. Many times we talk about this bank account, and I've heard of the Carefree Aquifer, and I understand that's mainly the recharge area that where the city recharges. Is that correct?
We have recharge there, though. That's not our primary recharge area.
Okay.
So yes, we have done that, and that's been great for that particular aquifer, but that's been rather limited. The majority of our recharge is not in that same area.
Okay, so is the recharge basically within the city limits of Scottsdale? I'm just speaking generally because I remember when the Arquahala venture was done 21 years ago, and there was different discussion about the Carefree Aquifer. So is the storage area generally within Scottsdale city limits, or does it kind of bleed over into Carefree and other areas?
Well, Carefree's a little separate. We do have some wells up there, so I can't say that we can't recover from other. We have several wells up there that we can recover from, and we do recover from. That is different. We do have a recharge area up there, and we have the ability to recover up there as well. The point being of our ASR wells was to give us that more capability to recharge in Scottsdale, to expand that capability, because there have been times where we've had water and we've recharged it at other places. Grusp is one area that we recharge in the East Salt River Basin, which is south of the city of Scottsdale. So we have in times recharged in areas that are outside the city of Scottsdale, but as we go forward, the intent is to put all that water with these ASR wells into the city of Scottsdale, into the aquifer within the city of Scottsdale. And you're correct that aquifer goes all different directions. So, but the good news is, while aquifers move and the water moves in the aquifer, it moves in the matter of meters a year. And it's not on a lightning race to get out of the city. It's a very slow, methodical process as that water moves.
Well, good. I just wanted to clarify that. Of course, if the water treatment was right on Scottsdale Road, right where the border is to, Phoenix, and so we do have a bank, but we have several people withdrawing from that bank. That's my general point. And finally, just to close out the question, I saw a request or a possible app for underground water, just tracking it, and they had a tutorial for me and council to look at. Did you see that come across?
That's a new one to me.
Really?
So,
yeah. Okay. That we did get it about 3 days ago, and it said this is how we can track. I think it might have been through Amwa or somebody, but we'll follow up on that.
All right.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, Vice Mayor Caputi, and
I just want to close it out. I want to underscore what Councilwoman Milhaven just said. I think that the most important thing for people to understand is that we are planning. We're having presentations. We're all getting schooled on the issue of water, and that we are looking far, far ahead. So when we get emails from people that talk about, where are you going to find the water? Nobody wants to build until we run out of water. We're looking far ahead. We have an entire department continually prepping and making sure that we're in a good situation. So I want everyone to just, if they could take one thing away from this conversation, it's that we are being thoughtful and we are planning carefully for the future, because we do live in the desert, and we're certainly giving great thought to the fact that water is a scarce resource. That's why we're having work studies on drought and on heat mitigation and on planning thoughtfully for the future. So this council is certainly very interested in making sure that we do all those things correctly moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that would conclude our work study item. And thank you. At this point, I would just reopen public comment as a matter of record. Seeing none, I would close public comment and then ask for a motion to adjourn our work study.
I make a motion to adjourn our work study session.
I see a motion and a second from Ms. Whitehead. Please record your vote. We are adjourned, unanimous.